Hello viewers, today is March 27th, 2120, and exactly 100 years have passed since Arturo Portaluppi founded the BMM in Pavia, Italy. This is an Original History Walks special to remember Portaluppi and his story, and the wonderful institution he founded, and also the great coronavirus pandemic, which started the ball rolling in so many ways. In honor of the occasion, I will be using English because that was the official language of the History Walks for their first 50 years. But don't worry, I will be going back to our regular Mandarin for our next video, so you can continue practicing your second language. Now, while many people are familiar with the BMM, not many people remember the story of the man who founded it, Arturo Portaluppi. When you study the coronavirus at school, in fact, you look at how it spread, how it was controlled, the economic recession that followed, and how China, with its Belt and Road policy, effectively reconstructed the world economy. And of course, we remember what happened to London. But all of that is the big picture. In true History Walks style, we are going to tell the story of an individual and how an individual was able to make a difference in the midst of all these grand events. Also, Arturo Portaluppi was from Pavia, and the History Walks actually began in that famous university town. It was only after some 30 years that we strategically moved our headquarters to Kinshasa. So we also enjoy talking about our old ancestral home. Well, the setting of our story is Pavia, Italy, spring 2020. Arturo Portaluppi is only 19 years old, and he has already caught the coronavirus. It did not affect him very seriously due to his young age. He just spent a few days in bed. And so Arturo decided to join an association of volunteers taking grocery shopping to elderly people all around the city of Pavia because they were not able to leave their homes and go shopping for themselves. Now, Portaluppi would take the groceries to them by bicycle because he did not have a car. He was just a first-year university student. And you know, old people love to chat, don't they? Obviously, at a safe distance. Arturo was a sociable boy, and also he was a psychology student, so he knew how important it was for people in a vulnerable situation to have social contact, at least every day. So he was chatting with an old lady when he noticed there was something really strange on her windowsill. It was a glass jar, and inside was a strange beige, gooey substance full of bubbles. Arturo thought it was some jam that had gone rotten, and he said to the old lady, "Would you like me to throw it out for you?" "Signora, vuole che io glielo butti via?" Now, the old lady said something like, "Ma sei pazzo, ragazzo mio, è il mio lievito." She said, "You're crazy, my boy, that is my yeast." Now, you and I, we understand why she said that, but Arturo did not. He didn't know what it was. Because at that time, yeast looked like this. Yes, my friends, 100 years ago, people actually used to buy yeast in packets from supermarkets. I know, it makes no sense. Everybody ate bread, everybody had access to flour and water, and yet practically nobody made their own yeast. Now, I think this, more than anything else, really shows us what their mentality was like, how ridiculous society was back in 2020. even more than those old photographs that you see of people with individual cars, or even families with 2 cars, even more than the old photographs of rubbish dumps. The story of the yeast coming in packets shows us how these people thought. They actually believed it was easier to buy half-dead yeast from supermarkets in two layers of packaging that they would then have to throw away and that would end up in the great rubbish dumps. Now, during the pandemic, yeast just wasn't available anymore in the supermarkets, so the old lady made it for herself. And she remembered how to do that from when she was just a little girl in the 1940s living in the Italian countryside. Well, when the old lady explained what she was doing to Arturo, he was fascinated, and he started keeping his own yeast at home. And when he tasted the bread it made, it was so good. He went back to the old lady. He said, "That was fantastic. What else can you teach me?" And in fact, Arturo realized that the elderly people he was helping through his volunteering were a wealth of information and wisdom, practical knowledge on how to do simple things that could make his life better and more balanced. Now, it seems incredible to us today that it took a universal pandemic for people to realize this. But you must understand that back in those times, old people and getting old, it was almost something negative. Old people were often portrayed as somehow slow or behind the times, as though that was a bad thing. When the elderly were most at risk during the pandemic, that was when society finally began to re-evaluate their role and their intrinsic value. Anyway, what Portaluppi did next has become legend in Italy. He invented a new profession for himself, working as a kind of middleman between elderly people and people his own age, gathering information and skills in order to share them with young people in schools or visiting them at home. And he took payment for his work in the form of a small share of the products the young people made with this new knowledge, or rather old knowledge. And soon he had so many products, he started selling them at a market stall. The idea spread and it grew. He soon needed help, and so he invited other young people to join him. And so the BMM was born. In fact, in Old Italian, BMM stands for the Banco dei Mestieri della Memoria. It doesn't translate well into English or Mandarin, but it would be something like Memory Skills Bank. So what is the moral of this story? Well, we all know, because we learn about it at school, just how rapidly technology and the economy evolved and changed and modernized as a result of the pandemic. We know about the renewable energy revolution, about fusion power and global warming, relativistic computer chips, and the theory of everything. But technology was already changing and rapidly evolving before the pandemic, and it would have continued to do so even without coronavirus. The same thing is true, of course, for global warming. I truly believe that the most fundamental differences the pandemic made were in our approach to the simple, everyday things, from car sharing and bicycles to sewing, cooking, carpentry, meditation, feng shui, kung fu, tantric sex, family time, smart working, and yeast. The pandemic was a terrible time, but I really wonder whether without it, the world today would be a place we would like to live in and be proud of. thank you for joining us from everybody here at the Original History Walks and the World of Tells.